Honorable Attorney General.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as we draw to the end of this long session of speeches on the budget, it befalls me as the only non-elected member of the House to make my voice heard. Do not expect me to lambast the previous government for their clear failings or dissect the inaccuracies, and I'm being very polite, the inaccuracies of the accusations laid at the door of this government. However, it is my duty to ensure that some misplaced criticisms are explained away. The first one regards the inexact interpretation of the allowances paid to junior ministers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as per paragraph 48 of the annex to the budget 25-26, it is provided that, and I quote, the National Assembly Allowances Act will be amended to cater for the payment of allowances to junior ministers. The amendments will be deemed to be effected as from 22nd of November 2024. Everyone, including the two, there's no one here, but including the two, or maybe now three, members of the opposition, know perfectly well what the law provides in terms of allowances for every member of this House. Section 2, subsection 4 of the National Assembly Allowances Act makes provisions for allowances to be payable to the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Ministers, Parliamentary Private Secretaries, the Leader of the Opposition, including members of the Opposition, as well as for junior ministers. However, the only omission with regards to junior ministers is the amount of allowances payable to them. Therefore, since junior ministers have replaced parliamentary private secretaries, they have been earning the same allowances as the PPS would have, and not a single cent more. Amendments will be brought to only cure an anomaly in the National Assembly Allowances Act, nothing more, nothing less. And those who have been wallowing in a deliberate misinterpretation of the annex to the budget on this question are not true patriots. Every member of this House has a sacred duty to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. To continue to make statements that create misconceptions and put doubts in the heads of many is just an irresponsible behavior. Now, of course, in light of what we have heard of the past regime, maybe we ought not be that surprised of the callous attitude of those sitting on the other side of the House. Call it naive, but I thought when I accepted to sit here that we would all, to the best of our ability and competence, properly ensure that the population is not misguided. I was obviously wrong. Let us therefore move on, in the hope that the nonsense will stop sooner than later. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the second point I will make here today concerns the pensions of retiring members, that is, persons who are no longer members of the Assembly. We have heard for calls from outside the House for those who are benefiting from a pension to forego that pension, and this in a bid to convince the people that they too are taking a knock, just like all those who will be affected by the reform of the old age pension. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it should be noted that the pensions of ex-members of this Assembly are governed by the National Assembly Retiring Allowances Act of 76. An ex-member will be eligible to a pension if he has served as a member for at least 2 terms. However, where an ex-member is elected again as a member of the Assembly, he shall cease to be paid that pension, but will in lieu be paid his allowance as a member of the Assembly, and in case his allowance as a member is less than the pension he was earning, that member will be paid the difference between the pension and his allowance. So today the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister do not obtain that pension. Indeed, the Leader of the Opposition also does not receive his pension as former parliamentarians, because at this moment in time they earn more in their respective capacities than they would be earning as simple ex-parliamentarians. Moreover, I will fail in my duty if I don't remind members of the Assembly, especially one particular member who is absent this afternoon, that one does not need to serve a whole term of 5 years to be eligible for that pension. If, for example, one has served as a speaker, albeit not being elected member of the Assembly, and that only for some months, that person is eligible for that pension, albeit proportionately. Members of the other side of this House know all this and have kept quiet, again, allowing the people to think that this was a big deal. It is not. And then, why have we not heard those ex-parliamentarians who are not sitting in the House today come out and say publicly that they are for this measure? The question why remains unanswered. This constant manner of hiding things, allowing the people to live in a state of incomprehension, is a crying shame and should be stopped. As I said, we have a sacred duty in this House, and befalls me, the only non-elected member, to have to say so. The third point, Deputy Speaker, sir, relates to the economy in general. So I'll confess I'm no expert in the matter, but I do have some neurons that permit me to gauge who might be telling the truth and who might not be. To do so, it is appropriate, is it not, to rely on independent views and opinions, to look, listen, and learn from those in the know who have been publicly saying what is the state of the economy and what are the obvious reforms that are needed. Let me say this, Moody's is not, as its name might erroneously convey, a person acts on his own whims and caprices. It acts on hard, undisputed facts. So does the World Bank, and so does any other financial institution for that matter. It's simple. If your earnings, whoever you are, do not permit it, you will not be granted banking facilities. Similarly, what this government has been harping on is that we have reached the red line. Going over the red line would mean absolute chaos. Those who are today calling this government unpatriotic and will then have to deal with rising prices and complete havoc. It seems some are under the impression in Mauritius that there is a God who is looking especially after us Mauritians, ready to save us from the excesses and failings of the previous regime, and that nothing bad can happen to us as a nation. Tout pour correct. To those I say, wake up. This is not reality. This is an illusion which you have been made to believe in. The quicker you realize that, the better for all of us. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me now turn to the place of my office in this budget. I will begin with a figure, 350 million rupees. Yes, only millions. I'm not talking of billions here. That is the allocation made to the Attorney General's office. Out of 47 budgetary heads, we rank 35th in terms of size, a relatively modest share. And yet, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, our role is anything but minor. My office is the constitutional compass of the executive. It is the principal legal advisor to the government of Mauritius. It drafts legislation, represents the public interest in litigation, and underpins the entire legal and institutional architecture of the state. Its work touches every branch of government and every citizen who looks to the law for protection, resolution, or redress. This work may not cost a lot to the taxpayer, but it is absolutely essential. Which reminds us that the capacity of institution does not depend on budgets alone. It depends on the clarity of the mission they are given and the hard work of its members to meet their objectives. This budget, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, calls on all of us to do better without much more in terms of means. For the whole government, this implies making smart choices and doing away with wastage. For the justice sector, this means putting the citizen at the center of our reform. At the Attorney General's Office, we are not merely updating legal texts, we are working to ensure that justice is fair, comprehensible, and accessible to all, and not just in principle, but also in practice. The Government Programme 25-29 sets out a bold institutional agenda over the next 4 years. We are tasked at my office to translate that vision into law, and much of our work is already in progress. Let me set the picture clearly. Since December of last year, 17 bills have already been introduced in this Assembly. Some major pieces of legislation, such as the Bail Amendment Act, the Financial Crimes Commission Miscellaneous Provisions Act, and the Representation of the People Amendment Act, which form part of a wider renewal of constitutional and democratic safeguards, have already been passed by this Assembly. 2 further bills are now ready for debate in the Assembly. The Revenue Tribunal Bill will replace the Assessment Review Committee with a permanent independent tribunal, enhancing transparency, efficiency, and fairness in tax matters. The Legal Aid and Legal Assistance Bill will overhaul the 1973 framework, expanding eligibility, simplifying procedures, and opening up access to justice to those who need it most. Other reforms are also in progress, and 6 other bills are in the phase of finalization and will be introduced in the days coming, such as the Civil Appeal Bill, the Criminal Appeal and Criminal Review Bill, with the objective to clarify appellate routes, reduce procedural complexities, and ensure that litigants understand the path that lies ahead of them, whether they are victims, defendants, or parties in a civil dispute. Last but not least, the Courts Act will be amended with a view to simplifying and streamlining the procedure for an application for judicial review. The Mauritius Citizenship Amendment Bill is also expected shortly, as part of the broader effort to align citizenship law with evolving legal and democratic realities. This will include doing away with the arbitrary powers introduced by the former government, including what has been termed the Hoffman Law. So, Deputy Speaker said, all this legislative work is not abstract. It touches real people, people seeking bail, people navigating tax disputes, people trying to appeal or defend themselves, people challenging quasi-judicial decisions affecting their rights. It may be legislation not for the headlines of newspapers, but for the real change in people's lives, one step at a time, as I often say. It reflects our view that laws must be made not only to govern, but above all, to serve. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the Honourable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance was right in his budget speech to describe the judiciary as an essential pillar of our democracy. The courts are not only there to resolve disputes, they are sentinels of our Constitution, protecting rights, ensuring accountability, and keeping power within lawful bounds. In that spirit, this budget makes a deliberate and targeted investment in the working tools of justice. First, to improve how cases are handled and judgments are delivered. A dedicated e-judiciary system will be introduced, first for the Chambers matters, and then at the registry of the Supreme Court. This is a long-awaited development that will help reduce delay and improve access to information across the system. Second, Rodrigues will see the introduction of a judicial court recording and video conferencing system, ensuring that remoteness is no longer a barrier to judicial effectiveness or procedural fairness. Indeed, the physical environment of justice is not being neglected. This budget makes provision for the renovation of the old Supreme Court building, the rehabilitation of the timber roof at the Flat District Court, and a new system enabling online payment of court fees and fines, which will simplify daily interactions between citizens and the judicial system. These are only the first steps. By the end of its mandate, this government will need to have invested in the rehabilitation of the other district courts. Their infrastructures have been left in a state of decay. For too long, the general public has been left to see falling standards in our system, being mirrored in the leaky roofs, cramped corridors, cracked benches of our courtrooms, and the infamous failings of the air conditioning systems. Third, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the foundations of institutional justice are being reinforced. A national crime agency will be created to bolster investigative capabilities across complex, cross-border, and organized criminal offenses. And critically, a new prosecution service will be established under the leadership of the Director of Public Prosecutions, without prejudice to his prerogatives. This will follow the structure of the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK, but tailored to our own local needs and reinforce the independence of prosecutorial functions. At the same time, a Constitutional Review Commission is expected to commence its work in the coming weeks. Its mission will be central to the accomplishments of this government. Its success or failure will determine the long-term credibility of our institutional reforms. It will allow for a principled and inclusive review of our Constitution with a view to strengthening checks and balances and reinforcing public trust, from electoral reform to a new generation of rights drafted by Mauritians for Mauritians and passed by a Parliament with a clear mandate to do so. It will usher in a new chapter of our progress as an independent nation. These constitutional reforms, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, will be accompanied by other novelties which will change how citizens interact with government. A freedom of information law will allow greater transparency and accountability in public administration. A framework for the public interest litigation will also be developed, allowing matters of broad societal concerns to be brought before the courts with fewer procedural barriers. At the same time, the office of the DPP will be supported as the apex prosecutorial authority. Bodies such as the Public Service Commission will see adjustments to their statutes to ensure efficiency and freedom from political interference. The guiding philosophy, therefore, is restoring public trust, restoring constitutional balance, and restoring the citizen at the center of the legal system. This is the spirit in which change is being pursued, not for partisan gain, not to be popular, but to rebuild methodically and durably the legal order on which our democracy depends. All these reforms, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, legislative, institutional, procedural, infrastructural, indeed point towards a nation built upon the rule of law, with a justice system that is both efficient and fair. My office will continue to play its role in that process, quietly, but with determination, and we will support the work of Parliament with well-drafted legislation. We will advise government independently and in good faith, and we will work with the judiciary to ensure that the architecture of justice in all its components improves. That, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, is why I support this budget. It is not an exercise in spending to please. It is an exercise in restoring sense and the restoration of public confidence in our courts, in the prosecutions, in our court procedure, and in the inherent fairness of our democracy. And this is perhaps the most vital project of all. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Shubo.
Mr. Speaker, this budget is being debated in a particular moment. We are at crossroads. At global and planetary level, we are living in defining times and moments. for humanity, the planet, and the people of Mauritius. We might even say we are living in times of existential times. This budget is being debated while the world may be at the eve of World War III, with nuclear exchange back on the agenda after the end of the Cold War in the 1990s. This is the first real existential crisis facing humanity since this time. This budget is also being debated in times of ecological crisis, when almost all what is called the ecological boundaries have been crossed. Climate boundaries, being one of the critical boundaries, have also been crossed. All the worst scenarios are now on the table. We are living in Anthropocene epoch, a new geological time when the very existence of human society and civilization is at stake. This is the second existential crisis we are into as a society part of planet Earth in crisis. The third global crisis is the crisis of resource and wealth grabbing. 10 men possess the equivalent of 50% of wealth of the humanity. This is not an existential one, but a social political time bomb upon which many societies are sitting. To conclude on this introduction, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Deputy Speaker.
Deputy Speaker, sir. As everyone knows, war, even if it does not result in nuclear exchanges, together with the eruption of ecological disasters every day on the planet, generates in parallel other serious crises, be it economic, social, and political. It is worth mentioning that almost all human societies, including Mauritius, are now fully embedded within global capitalism. This is not an ideological position, but an objective fact upon which we act in policy making. Our agenda. This government has a triple objective and agenda, bringing democratic, electoral and constitutional reform, as highlighted by my colleague, Attorney General, integrating rights of nature within the Constitution and judicial framework, and in parallel, establishing socio-economic model within new economic and social order in rupture with the prevailing model. This is an ambitious agenda. To ensure transformation and reform, progressive reform of social and economic reform, I would add ecological order. A new social contract is of utmost necessity. Consensus building is critical. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, we in the Alliance du Changement have won a formidable landslide electoral victory, but we have not yet succeeded in building a new social contract, social dialogue with inclusiveness and participatory democracy. This budget and the measures contained in will be our litmus test in defining whether we will be able to forge this new social contract, this new social consensus. This budget, and mainly its proposal to raise the age of eligibility of old age pension from 60 to 65, have raised genuine and healthy concern by Mauritians. We respect these genuine concerns and protests it generated last Saturday. The structures we have set up, that is the 2 ministerial committees and other potential spaces, should aim at understanding this genuine and healthy concern of many citizens, workers, women, the poor people, the youth, and the small-scale producers and operators. But at the same time, we have to strongly oppose some opportunists, the previous MSM regime, and some economic quarters who are sliding on this genuine social concern to promote their own political and economic greed agenda. They are the ones responsible of the socio-economic and indebtedness crisis upon which this government has had to act in this budget. I also regret the maladie infantile, I must say, obsession infantile, of a tiny few trade unionists, and I need not to mention them here, against me and Resistance Alternative this recent week. And as if their first objective was to discredit me and Resistance Alternative, not to change the pension reform. Be it as it may, in these times of multiple crises at global and local level, successful governance means co-evolving in dialectics with social contradiction and social protest. This is and will be the challenge of this government. And I must say that there are already significant acts in this direction by our government. Besides promptly responding with the setting up of 2 interministerial committees, this government, and in particular the Prime Minister, promptly reacted to ensure that social protest scheduled by the trade union movement not be interdicted by the sabotaging act of an MSM nominee who wanted to deny the access of gendarmes to the unions. This was almost a social blasphemy, as the gendarmes, besides being the historical host, race-tracking of so many generations of Mauritians, besides being the host and so many of my colleagues, is also the cradle of the working class struggle in Mauritius. The Labour Party was born in 1936 there, and the first Labour Day too was celebrated in 1938 there. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me briefly give an outline. I will not repeat what my colleagues and honourable members of the majority have said, and which I fully agreed. This budget, on the one hand, proposes new framework to optimize and sustain our commons, that is land, mainly agricultural land and ocean. This budget proposes a pathway for energy security as well as massive transition to renewable energy, with some elements of people's-led production with agri-solar farms. This budget proposes to make innovation and knowledge a pillar of the future Mauritius. This budget proposes a shift from focus on estate, property, and ranche capitalism to a more production-based investment. On the other hand, this budget proposes a rupture in fiscal and tax regime prevailing for more than 20 to 25 years to introduce new tax on the rich, including on dividend and segments of capitalist class, to ensure a fair share contribution. Even if this fiscal regime is for 3 years, this shift should be commended and cannot be denied by socialists and the union movement. In parallel, this budget is proposing a substantial pension reform to raise the year of eligibility of BRP from 60 to 65. The above significant policy measures has been justified on the basis of the state of the economy, the level of indebtedness of our country, long-term sustainability of pension system in Mauritius. Let me recap the history and evolution of the pension system in Mauritius. First, we had the slavery and indentured labor. Well, pension didn't exist. People were only needed for their courage and labor force. The first pension, as I mentioned when replying to the PNQ of the leader of the opposition, came in 1956 with the birth of the old age pension. From the social unrest of 37 and 43, it was the product of the struggle of the Labour Party and the first generation of working class struggle and trade unions. Second moment is the post-independence era, 1976 and 1978, where the National Pension Scheme, a public contributory system, despite fierce opposition from this sugar oligarchy and rich and middle class at the time was enacted by Parliament, by this Parliament. The National Pension Scheme provided a widespread coverage, being a contributory benefits as well as non-contributory benefits. This was part of the emerging post-independent welfare state, the very welfare state that some people supposedly intend to defend now. The welfare state at the time this welfare state was supposed, the pension system, the NPS, was supposed to be enhanced, and there were a lot of impediments due to the objection of the rich class lobby at the time. Maybe some people can get access, I won't read it because of time constraint, of the Hansard when the National Pension Scheme was enacted in 1976. There are lots of knowledge in understanding the whole pension system in Mauritius. The next historical moment was in 2008, when a reform of the retirement age and old pension benefits and the age of entitlement was proposed. The unions and the people of Mauritius raised concerns at the time, protested, and finally a social pact was concluded. The age of retirement was raised to 65, but old age pension eligibility would be maintained was maintained at 60, as well as the right of any employee to retire on optional basis at the age of 60 and be entitled to retirement benefit under the previous labor law, and was also entitled to reduce pension under the National Pension Scheme at 60 years. Then came 2020. 2020, while the people was bleeding under COVID, a series of crime was committed by the then government and Padayachi, the ex-finance minister of the previous government. First, they abolished the National Pension Scheme. It wasn't in their manifesto. Anybody can go and read. All the people of the MSM people who was on the street should have brought their manifesto and show the people what was written and was not written in the manifesto in 2019. So they abolished the National Pension Scheme. Commentaire de plus. In parallel, they created the MIC for big corporates and their cronies. They subsidized all the corporates and gave more than 21 billion rupees of public funds to the corporates. These are the figures that I obtained as a trade unionist when I was not in the Alliance du Changement. Alongside, the insatiable greed took over, and with all the tenders and contracts dilapidating public money while the people were bleeding. While they dismantled the National Pension Scheme, many employees were receiving some 5,000 rupees of pension per month. So they decided to stop it for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. This was a crime. I have figures where categories of employees were receiving even a higher pension at the time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, they dismantled the National Pension Scheme and set up their famous CSG. They're based on erroneous assessment. They said that the National Pension Fund was not sustainable. This was far, far from reality. The reality, as I said last time, is that the National Pension Fund now, after the abolition of contribution, is paying contribution, in 5 years have been paying contribution of around 200 billion rupees to all employees who were part of the National Pension Scheme. So the contribution was abolished, and the 20 billion rupees is coming from benefits derived from investment of the National Pension Fund. So imagine what the size of the National Pension Fund would have been had they not dismantled the National Pension Scheme in 2020. They set up this in parallel when as I said, my officers have now testified that they said they wanted the National Pension Fund to pay the 4,500 rupees that they promised in the election in 2019. And they tried to force officers in my office to pay 4,000 rupees from the National Pension Scheme. And officers in my office said that this is not possible because the National Pension Scheme have contributing members. And what need to be paid has to be paid to contributing members and not to non-members of the fund. And this is where Padayachi get angry and he decided to eliminate the National Pension Scheme. As I said, this was the treason at the time. And in fact, I think we need to reflect what happened in this bleeding moment. Not only they dismantled the National Pension Scheme, but they put the CSG, they created the CSG supposedly to pay the 4,500 rupees that they promised in the election of 2019. But in reality, the basic retirement pension is a tax-based pension. It's not a contributory-based pension, okay? It's a tax-based. That is, you pay the pension from tax collected, okay? And this is independent on the number of people, young people or workers you have at any particular moment in time, because it's tax-based. You can have less people working, but you have lots of wealth created, okay? So it's a tax-based. And they decided at this time, in fact, what in reality happened was that all the people of Mauritius were contributing to pay for the BRP by price increases. We were not only bleeded by COVID, we were also bleeded by massive price increase between 2020 and 2024 and 2024. This is how the BRP was paid. It didn't rely, CSG was not the only contributor to be part of the BRP. They also used taxpayers' money, indirect tax, to pay the BRP, the increase in the number of beneficiaries of the BRP. This is how the volcano, the crisis has been generated. In the present moment we are in. In the present moment and in this budget, this government, our government, has proposed a major pension reform. The core, not the only, the major part of it is the eligibility of to benefit the basic retirement pension, long ago called old age pension. Let me give some figures. It's my duty to give some figures. As at June 2025, we have 272,033 people beneficiaries of pensions. The amount payable as at June 2025 is 55 billion rupees, 323,000 to 50,323 million rupees. Second, I must add, this is being mentioned for the first time, that on top of the basic retirement pension, there was 1,000 rupees for all beneficiaries from 65 to 74 years old. This 1,000 rupees is being maintained in the context of the reform. In addition, for all beneficiaries between 75 and 87 years, there was a 2,500 CSG retirement benefit. This too is being maintained, and all the entitlement, 1,000 rupees, and all the entitlement of 2,500 rupees for our senior citizen, 800 and more, they are being maintained. And this must be very clear to the Mauritians. Secondly, we need to understand that in 2019-2020, there was roughly the budget spent was 20 billion. And in 2024, the budget spent was more than 51 billion. This means that there was an increase of more than 150, not to say 175%. And this has to be taken on board. Let me add, as mentioned in the budget, all all BIP, basic invalid pension beneficiaries, will be paid pensions up to 65 years. According to figures I have, this will beneficiate some 5,856 persons with disability entitled to BIP. Also, all beneficiaries of basic widow pensions, they are totaling 6,929 people. They will be beneficiating the basic widow's pension. I must also stress that as at date, nearly 40% of beneficiaries of BRP are in employment. Nearly 40%. It's, in fact, our figure gave 39.66% in the first year, 61 years. In the second year, it's 31.64. In the third year, that is 63, it will be 28.57. And then 24%, 22%, reaching 15% of the beneficiaries are working. Most of the beneficiaries are from private sector, and the rest of them are from public sector. The reason given for this pension reform, apart from the state of public debt, is known. I won't repeat it, is life expectancy and population growth projection in the coming 50 to 100 years. I must also stress, seeing some of these people on the street last Saturday, mainly Parayachi, leader of the opposition, Pravin Jagnnath, that some of these people, when they were in government, they themselves recommended the raising of eligibility for basic retirement pension from 60 to 65. This was part of a technical committee paper that they produced, where there were 10 recommendations. Among the recommendation, the number 10 recommendation, I read it, 10th, to increase BRP eligibility age to 65 years. This is theirs. They should have brought it to Shanmos with them and distributed it to my fellow comrades of the trade unions. There are 10 recommendations, all of them aimed at jeopardizing the pension, the BRP, or the eligibility of the BRP. This is their document. It's a document dated from a committee which met in 2016, 2017, up to 17th March 2017. So the people need to know the real culprit. Now we, the government of the people, we are the government of the people, for the people. We have heard the public concern and the genuine protest. This is why, as I mentioned, 2 interministerial committees have been set up. The 2 ministerial committee, I must stress from the cabinet decision, is to look into possible support to those persons aged between 60 and 65 years employed in sectors in difficult work conditions and eventual means-tested eligible housewives and mothers. This committee will be presided by the Prime Minister. The other one is under my chair and will look into possible support to persons in a state of health-related inability to work. I am pleased to inform the House that the second committee will be called on this Wednesday to discuss and look into the possible support for people who have disability. There is a possibility that the 2 committees merge to look into both terms of reference as decided by the Cabinet, but also to take on board other concerns, other considerations raised by the people and Mauritians. And the second, I must also mention that in the budget there is a small but important amendment to pension benefits. All people going abroad for medical purpose will be able to stay 12 months instead of 6 months abroad, and their basic pension will be maintained. This is very important. In the budget, it is also mentioned that the medical board, the famous medical board that so many Mauritians complain about, that the medical board will be transferred in hospital and further developed within the reform that the committee number 2 intends to propose to include reform, the disability benefits reform and the reform for people aged 60 to 65 who can't work for health reasons. Let me add a few words for as Minister of Social Integration in Mauritius. As you know, I have 2 portfolios, Minister of Social Security and Minister of Social Integration. And let me say at the very outset that the present House needs a snapshot of poverty situation in Mauritius. And based on the latest figures from Statistics Mauritius and the poverty analysis of 2023 published in 2025, on the basis of the 2023 relative poverty line of 12,378 for a adult member, one adult member household, and 20,200 for a household comprising 2 adults and 2 children, there were an estimated 29,800 households, or 101,900 persons in relative poverty in Mauritius, representing 8.4% of the total population. I think it's important for members of this House to note that the report of poverty stated a very, very, very important facts, a very important analysis. It says that government transfers, basic pensions, and other security benefits like social aid, free health services, education, and public transport play a key role in bringing down poverty. Without these transfers, the poverty rate would have been 36.4% instead of 7.3%, the actual poverty rate. Consequently, and this is very important for the nation to know, the number of poor households would have increased from 29,800 to 148,500. So this is why what we are discussing now, that is the reform of the pension and the reform of the tax regime, is of prime importance. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me highlight some of the social benefits mentioned in the budget. The government, conscious of its role in providing support to the most vulnerable one, to this effect, An array of schemes is being provided for the financial year 2025-2026 to eligible households of the SRM. 500 million under the subsistence allowance providing support on a monthly basis to 7,300 households. 65 million under the child allowance scheme to encourage 6,000 children monthly to attend school. 11.2 million under the school premium scheme to reward around 480 students who succeeded in grade 9, SC, HSC, and tertiary education. 3 million under the free examination fees scheme to support students to take a second attempt at SC and HSC. 500,000 to around 50 students under the waiving of administration fee scheme to follow full-time course at MITD and other recognized tertiary institutions. 800 million rupees under school material scheme to provide school materials, including bag, uniform, shoes, copybooks, and stationery to 12,400 students beneficiaries. 300,000 rupees under the creche scheme in respect of children aged between 3 months to 3 years as an incentive for their admission in a registered child daycare center, thereby allowing their mothers to take up employment or following a training course. Let me say the NEF is high on the debate agenda. Let me remind the House that the total grant allocated to the National Empowerment Foundation has been increased to 267 million rupees, amounting to an approximate 5% increase. The fund dedicated to the National Social Inclusion Foundation has also been increased to 1.3 billion rupees. As of today, some 530 NGOs and non-profit organizations are registered with the NEF. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me conclude now by saying a few words, political words. You know, my party and myself have been the target of harsh protest these recent months, and especially the recent week. We do understand these views, for we are one of the symbols of the working people and social justice in this country. In a sense, being the target is commensurate to the values and program we defend. But let me reassure the people that we have decided to be part of the Alliance du Changement for the following reasons. First, to get rid of the MSM and its mafiosization practices during its reign. And we have succeeded 50% of our mission in the last general election. Second, I would say the other quarter of our addition to the alliance is to bring fundamental democratic, electoral, ecological reform within our constitution, which will be a legacy for our children for the next 50 years. Third, the last quarter, the 25% remaining, is to govern and apply the best policies, especially socio-economic ones, in favor of citizens, workers, pensioners, and youth. Our main in deciding such policies is the immediate and long-term interest of these social classes. And as stated, Resistance et Alternative promote the best we can, inclusiveness and participatory democracy in defining these socio-economic policies. During the last weeks of social turmoils, I have met and had conversation, many people don't know, with almost all the leaders of the trade union movement and many in the civil society movement, in number 4, my constituency, and various regions of the country. Despite all, let me say it loudly, none of them want Resistance et Alternative, to quit this alliance. We are here and we will stay in this alliance to meet our objective. Many of us have witnessed attempt to explode this alliance, they have all failed. Now that some of us are not on the streets, we will defend the best we can our point of views, our values, and the people's interests within the government as long as we can. The butterfly is here, flying alongside the people, as well as alongside the key of the Labour Party, the heart of the MMM, and the freedom tree of the ND. May peace, justice, and liberty prevail in this critical time we are living. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Yes, Honourable Mr. Dibal.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir, I beg to move for the adjournment of the debate.
Need to be seconded. Honourable Bulel, second. The question is that the debate now be adjourned. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move for the adjournment of the House to tomorrow, Wednesday, the 25th of June at 3 p.m.
Motion seconded.
Yes.
Yes, DPM. Second. The question is that the House be adjourned to Wednesday, the 25th of June 2025 at 3 p.m. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned.